Hello everyone, this is SteamedIguana, and today we're going to be delving into something a little different about how one of my favorite video game franchises, Metroid, actually does have some giant monsters and references to cut. Hold on, someone's calling.
Hey, Gridman, been a while. Heard that you were making a video about my comic, The Rise of Ultraman.
Oh hey, what's up? Yeah, for sure, but today I'm talking about...
Oh, I know, but I think you owe me a favor, don't you?
I guess?
So because I'm such an old friend, why don't you go ahead and just do it now? After all, don't you forget, you wouldn't be here if it weren't for me.
Okay. Fine, I'll do it.
Excellent. Now, what was that you always say? Sayonara.
Well, I guess we are doing something a little different today. We're going to be doing a comic review, and a fairly new one at that. So stay tuned for The Rise of Ultraman! So for those of you who don't know, The Rise of Ultraman! Why does that keep happening? The Rise of Ultraman was the result of a collaboration between Marvel Comics and Subaraya, after one of Subaraya's partners reached out for an idea to bring Ultraman to the pages of American comics. It was revealed at Tokyo Comic-Con in 2019, with updates throughout the year, such as at events like C2E2 leading up to its release. Finally, in September of 2020, The Rise of Ultraman hit shelves, being a 5-issue comic that would have monthly releases all the way up into January of 2021. This was the first time that Ultraman had graced the pages of a company like Marvel, being written by Kyle Higgins and Matt Groom, with the illustrations being done by Francesco Manna and Michael Cho. And of course, with only 5 issues in the title of Rise, you know full well that this is not going to be the last one. An immediate continuation, The Trials of Ultraman, is going to be released in just March of this year. There is a lot of kaiju stuff coming out this year, wow. This leaves a lot of people wondering though, should I read The Rise of Ultraman? And I'm just here to say, I absolutely think you should. Just minor spoilers beyond the first issue here, so unless you want to go in totally blind, don't you worry. The Rise of Ultraman is a great starting off point for Marvel's run on the character, even for someone who isn't as well versed in the Ultra series such as myself. In fact, I think the comic is made to be accessible for even those who aren't big into the Ultra series, since you can read it without knowing very much about the source material. It's a reboot, but that's not at all a bad thing. Rather than going off and just making a story, slapping the Ultraman name on it just because, they do take a lot from classic Ultraman, like the 1966 original and Ultra 7. The main character is still Shin Hayata, and he still becomes Ultraman. And a lot of the characters like Kiki Fuji and Captain Muramasu are all named after characters from the original Ultraman. There's even a character named Ichino Tani, who is a reference to a character from Ultra Q. I think that this is a reboot in the best possible way. A reimagining. Much like the live-action Attack on Titan movies, it takes just enough from the original to still very much be that franchise, but changing it up enough to be its own thing. I especially love the little references to character names and dates that show up, like the first contact with aliens being in 1966 when the original show aired. And also things like how the Science Patrol has evolved, and this isn't some small organization, but rather, as this takes place in the modern day, it's flourished and become this massive underground operation since that first contact. All the aspects of the setting and the characters come off really well. And speaking of, the characters are great too. You only meet a handful in these first few issues, like the ones I mentioned before. There's Shin Hayata, who, besides becoming Ultraman, desperately wants to join the Science Patrol, but he keeps getting rejected. And his friend, who just recently got accepted in, Kiki Fuji. Characters like Captain Uramasu and director Ichino Tani give us our primary look into the depths of the Science Patrol. And Professor Yamamoto, a former member of the USP, is that one character that holds all the secrets for our heroes to find along the way. One of my favorite things that they did here, though, is that they gave Ultraman himself a character. Let me explain. In the original show, Ultraman is obviously also a separate entity from Hayata, but in the comic, we really see that in a way that I don't think we have before. Ultraman and Hayata are able to talk to each other in their heads, and a ghostly visage of him can appear before Hayata as well. I think it offers a dynamic that is very fresh and unique, At least as someone who hasn't seen very much of the later Ultra series. That Ultraman has his own voice and character outside of Hayata is honestly one of the best parts of the comic, and allows for exposition to be brought out more naturally than it might have otherwise. And of course, it's a comic. We gotta talk about the art. I personally think it looks great, and you can see a definitive style form between the pages. It fits well with the material, and it definitely captures the essence of the monster designs being more like rubber suits. Ultraman himself is definitely much more buff and muscular, but since it is a superhero comic, that makes sense, and it works damn well for Ultraman. Gotta love me some buff Ultraman. Oh.
Holy fuck, is this wrong? But holy hell, is it erotic?
As for the story, I don't want to spoil too much, so instead, why don't we just go through the first issue together? Give you a little snippet of what to expect getting into The Rise of Ultraman! No, seriously, why does that keep happening? It starts off in 1966, when Dan Moriboshi, Wink, a member of the Science Patrol, is chasing down a UFO. His ship, however, is destroyed, and Moriboshi himself is taken by some alien being. Next thing we know, it's 2020, and we're introduced to Kiki Fuji, who's in a taxi texting an old friend of hers, Shin Hayata. She enters the Science Patrol's secret headquarters. Of course, being a first issue, we're introduced to many characters, with director Ujino Tani and Captain Muramasu now being introduced as well. There's not much time for that though, as an alarm blares, meaning it's mission time. Kiki and Muramasu explore a location that's apparently been breached by a kaiju, and after a little investigating, it attacks. A Talisdon comes from the shadows, pouncing on Kiki. It just so happens that Shin managed to sneak his way into the scene and saves her, shooting the kaiju with one of the USP's primary weapons, the K-Ray. Now, the kaiju here aren't exactly kaiju-sized, but trust me, if you read through the whole comic, you will get your fill of giant monsters, don't you worry. Continuing through, Kiki and Shin get dinner, talk about the incident, and how he very illegally trespassed into USP business. About how Kiki made the cut and he didn't, their feelings, and just generally the semantics of having just joined the Science Patrol. Their dinner gets cut short though, when an alert is sent out by Captain Muramasu, and Kiki is forced to bring Shin to the scene once again. A UFO had crashed, and he admits the backup might be needed, especially having a broken arm and all. As they approach, he mentions how similar it is to the event with Dan Moriboshi in 1966, and how dangerous this could be. Then, the being within the UFO begins to rise. Muramasu orders Shin to shoot it if he really wants to be in the USP, which he reluctantly does, injuring the alien. But afterwards, he feels a sense of forgiveness from the UFO. Shin himself approaches and is sucked inside of this Ultra being. And that's where issue 1 ends. An excellent cliffhanger, but I think we all know what happens next. Well, there you have it. The Rise of Ultraman! I just give up. The Rise of Ultraman is a fun, brief little comic series that is honestly awesome to see culminate like this. Even though Godzilla has been on the pages of Marvel before, I can safely say I never expected Ultraman to be. Hopefully this pushed you to go support your local comic or game store and check it out. I think even for those who are more into Godzilla or other kaiju stuff, it still offers a great entry point for those not as familiar with Ultraman. As for me, I gotta go watch some more Ultra and Toku stuff myself. So if you want to see more reviews like this from the cyber world, let me know by hitting that subscribe and bell button down below. And maybe hit that like button too, so maybe you'll fuse with an interstellar Ultra being too. Just maybe. But until next time everybody, sayonara.